Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Lisa Booth, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Fox News alert: President Trump and the First Lady are at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh to pay their respects to the victims and families of Saturday's attack. We're following the president's visit to Pittsburgh, and we'll have updates. In the meantime, we are just 1 week away from the high-stakes midterm elections as President Trump is pulling out all the stops with a blitz of campaign rallies in the final stretch. This, as Politico highlights, how fierce the battle for control of Congress has become. Quote, some Republicans deep in Trump country have regained ground, but the handful of bright spots have been outweighed by a tidal wave of Democratic spending and voter support in the closing weeks of the midterm election. In recent days, House Republicans have rushed to fortify a surprise collection of GOP-held districts in a half-dozen states that were never expected to be competitive. So, where do we stand? Let's go to our very favorite Bill Hemmer. He's at the billboard with the latest on all the key races. How are you doing up there, Bill?
Dana, good afternoon to you. Where do we stand, right? I'll show our viewers right now. By the way, this thing's supercharged this year, and you're going to see for good reason based on all the information we're trying to gather and tell a story through television for our viewers all across the country next Tuesday night. Where do we stand on the Senate side? We've crunched the numbers. This is where we believe we have lean and likely Republicans at 50 Senate seats, lean and likely Democrats at 45. 5 real toss-ups. According to our data right here in the middle, that's Florida, Indiana, Missouri, Nevada, and Arizona on the Senate side. On the House side now, as we go further in the map here, we believe these are the 27 true toss-up House races. Might be a few more, might be a few less, but 240 to 195 in the current House. This is where we believe the battle will be played out to figure out who takes control of the House after Tuesday night. Now, closing times, right? We're 7 days and 2 hours away from the polls closing. At 7 o'clock East Coast time, what do you look for that night? What do you key on? I think at 7 o'clock, Dana, you think about this Senate race in Indiana, good couple of House races in Virginia. I think you think about the governor's race down there in Georgia. At 7:30, we move into North Carolina, also Ohio, a couple good House races there, and a governor's race as well in the Buckeye State. We'll see whether or not Joe Manchin hangs on in West Virginia. Now we're deep into the 8 o'clock hour, and you see how much data is now coming into us here in New York. Florida, Missouri, a Senate race there. A lot of questions about how Pennsylvania plays out with the redistricting in the House. We'll move further west throughout the night, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. 11 o'clock California. If it's real close in the House, you have 5 to 8 toss-up seats in the House in California. I know you've got breaking news, Dana, so I'll kick it back to you.
Well, we're excited to have you on election night. Thank you, Bill. We do have, I think, some video of President Trump. He is in Pittsburgh with the First Lady and Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. They are there to pay their respects to the victims of the synagogue massacre that occurred on Saturday at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There you see the First Lady paying her respects. There were many people there that said, in fact, including that rabbi right there, Rabbi Myers, who said that the president was definitely welcome to come to the synagogue. And the president had said that he had wanted to go from the moment he heard about it, and he wanted to make sure he wasn't going to cause any trouble because the president's footprint, of course, is large when he travels anywhere. So they decided to go today. There were 5 funerals today that were taking place, and there will be, of course, 6 more, unfortunately. We'll take it around the table here for thoughts about the images that we're seeing here. Jesse, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, just very sad and depressing images right now watching this play out. Unfortunately, presidents of both parties have had to do this too many times over the last few years with regards to mass shootings. The president's always been a close friend of Israel. The Israeli people and the president have a very strong bond. His son, Jared Kushner, is Jewish, and as you know, the president, being from New York City, has long been a friend of the Jewish people and vice versa for many, many years. Sadly, this has been politicized by many people, and are linking the president to the shooting. I don't see any linkage there, and he's had to punch back from that. Hopefully, after this, we can all lay down our arms and stop attacking each other over senseless killings and pointing fingers and playing the blame game. But, I don't have a lot of hope for that right now. The media is obsessed with blaming the president for all acts of violence in this country, regardless of political party and motivation. So, this is something the president's going to have to deal with moving forward. But I just think today is a day where we should all just step back and let him pay respects and let this community heal.
Greg, it was the worst attack in American history on a Jewish community, and the president and the first lady there with Rabbi Myers at the Tree of Life Synagogue.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember the victims, but also to forget the killer. So it's good that we don't mention the person's name. It's good that we don't show the face of this guy, and there has to be a way to even move to. I mean, if he should be killed, but to erase him from the world completely, because so many times killers like these do such things for notoriety. And so what we should give them is the complete opposite, total 100% obscurity, where it's like he didn't exist.
Right.
Make him so he never existed.
One thing that was really touching, Lisa, was the fact that the doctors there doctors and nurses that took care of the shooter that we won't name, as Greg rightly points out, they were Jewish, and they took as best care as they could of him. And one of the doctors from the Allegheny Hospital was talking about just how remarkable the Jewish community has been in Squirrel Hill.
Well, and I think that's a remarkable statement of the doctor and the nurse. And I pray for the families who are laying to rest today, their loved ones. And I think that is important for President Trump to be there and say that there is absolutely no place in our society for anti-Semitism, and to denounce people like David Duke and the Louis Farrakhan's of the world. I know President Trump, as Jesse pointed out, his daughter is Jewish, his father or his son-in-law is Jewish, his grandchildren are Jewish. I think he has a special place in his heart for the Jewish community. So our thoughts and prayers are with them today as we honor them and as they are laid to rest.
As we've seen in these videos, the First Lady is placing what you might not be able to see, that it's white roses that she is placing on each of those memorials there that are there for the 11 that were murdered. Juan, your thoughts?
Well, it's a sacred moment, as you know, with people being buried. So I think that probably best for us to try to keep the families and obviously that community in our hearts. It's a difficult time, and it's complicated obviously by the politics, the question of whether or not the president should have gone there today, the fact that there are protests, the fact that some people had expressed concern, including, as has been widely circulated, the former rabbi of that synagogue saying that he's a purveyor of hate speech. So the question is, responsibility and the like. I mean, let it all go for now. I mean, right now it's just about, I think, a sense of common humanity with people who were slaughtered in their place of worship, and it's just horrible. It makes you wonder where we are as an American people over the last week. Bombs, gunfire of this kind, also gunfire in Kentucky where 2 black people were killed by a white supremacist. It's just very upsetting time to be in America.
Well, and this was at a baby naming ceremony, no less. How evil does someone have to be to carry out an attack like this in a house of worship at a baby naming ceremony?
The other thing is the other people that you saw in that clip were Steve Mnuchin, he's the Treasury Secretary, and then Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner, who are spending their these years with the president at the White House, volunteering their time and working on these issues. They traveled with the president and the First Lady today. As I mentioned, the First Lady placing white roses and the president placing stones. Jesse, I did want to ask you about something I think has been pretty remarkable about this story, is you learn more about the neighborhood of Squirrel Hill and just how close-knit this community has been over the years. People that we know that grew up there, that they've written about what a beautiful community it is and how they've come together. A rabbi I interviewed today that he leads a congregation about 15 minutes away. He said he doesn't know anyone in his congregation that wasn't affected by this massacre because they are so close.
Right. When you go out beyond your workplace in the cities in Washington and New York, you see a country that's a lot different than what you see in the media. You see a country that loves its neighbors, that loves its family members and its friends and its community, and they go to church and they go to synagogue and they go to baseball games, and they feel a sense of one. But when you watch the television every night, all you see is division and hatred and finger pointing. And unfortunately, politicians watch television and they take their cues. For instance, the mayor of Pittsburgh and the governor, Democrats, refused to join the president today at this ceremony because I guess they felt pressured or they didn't want to align themselves with him. We saw this happen, the Philadelphia Eagles, my favorite football team, unfortunately refused to go. Many of them, almost all of them, to the White House to celebrate their Super Bowl victory because of the kneeling controversy. I just wish everybody could stop for a second in moments like this and say, let's just be one country together, one America, and maybe the next day we can start going back to politics. But these are the days where leaders need to all come together and be united.
Any further thoughts, Greg?
No, I agree, and I do think that, the never let a crisis go to waste people are definitely using this. If you watch other networks like CNN and Don Lemon saying disturbing things about how we have to stop with this divisiveness, except that white men cause every problem in the world. It's disturbing to see that sort of thing.
I don't think that's the issue at all. I mean, I think the reason
that's what he said, though.
The reason that you get a white male mayor of Pittsburgh refusing to join in, or you get people in the congressional delegations refusing to join, has nothing to do with white men. I think it has to do.
I agree.
And this is speaking to you, Jesse, directly. And I just think that you have to say, there's concern that President Trump's rhetoric creates this environment. And so people are then get into a political game of saying who's responsible. He's not responsible. But his rhetoric definitely is an issue in America at this time.
It's funny that you can conflate that. You can say the president isn't responsible for shootings, but his rhetoric contributes to an atmosphere where shootings take place. I think that's kind of a cheap way of indirectly blaming the president, and I wouldn't stand for it if I was the president.
I don't think it's cheap at all, especially when you hear the perpetrator of this horror talk about immigrants in the caravan and respond.
I just want to say one thing, DeJuan. When there was shootings of police officers and officers in this country were executed in New York City and in Texas during the Obama administration, no one blamed Barack Obama for his anti-police rhetoric or supporting Black Lives Matter. No one linked him to that. No one said his rhetoric contributed to an atmosphere where cops were killed. We were all very prudent and responsible, yet any time there's any act of violence in this country, Donald Trump's name is inserted by his political opponents, and it's wrong.
Jesse, you're a good guy. That's not analogous. That's not right.
What we are seeing at this moment I respectfully disagree.
is not someone saying, hey, there's a problem with police abuse.
Yes. I love the fact that we began this with, we don't want politics to interrupt this somber moment, and then politics.
So I'm going to end it. We're going to focus on the families and all of their grief, and our thoughts and prayers should be with them. More of the 5 coming up.
As Halloween approaches, media clowns are out in full costume of hypocritical outrage, accusing everyone else of ginning up anger. How dare you be so coarse, they cry. My response, cram it, you jerks. Let's rewind 2 months. The Kavanaugh hearings, our modern witch trial, where we watched the man get destroyed before his family, enabled by a salivating, hateful media, blindly embracing unverified slime packaged by a well-oiled machine. The accusations were gross. Nothing close has ever come from the other side. As women in costume suggested a future where Kavanaugh would enslave and brutalize women. Left-wing nuts crashed the hearings. Outside, they hounded Republicans, egged on by Democrats. And those defending due process were branded abuse enablers. An entire party tried to pit gender against gender. Remember?
It's the men in this country, and I just want to say to the men in this country, just shut up and step up.
What would you call that rhetoric? Divisive? Heated? So now, months later, we find that NBC might have sat on the info that would have discredited claims of that litigating loon, Michael Avenatti. Apparently, NBC had the info for weeks about a witness Avenatti gave to them, who instead of backing Julie Swetnick's allegations, actually denied them. She also accused Avenatti of twisting her words. Surprise. Yet this news went nowhere, allowing the attacks on the Kavanaughs to flourish. or what Pelosi liked to call collateral damage. And now, a day before Halloween, the same blind, self-obsessed media who aided one of the ugliest spectacles in recent history are knocking at your door, demanding soul-searching from you and me. They pray you don't remember, but we do. Sorry, no candy for you kids. Get off our porch. Jesse, this story is interesting, and it's not getting a lot of play, that NBC withheld evidence that would have debunked this mysterious witness. Just kind of went away.
Yeah, I know they don't want to talk about it because they're guilty of collusion with the Democratic Party. Remember what happened with the Access Hollywood tape. They had Trump on camera for 10 years saying what he said and dropped it 3 weeks before the general election. Very suspicious timing. They also spiked the Ronan Farrow expose on Harvey Weinstein because the parent company had a business relationship with Weinstein's studio. And also, how about the Cory Booker story? You know, Cory Booker was credibly accused of forcing allegedly someone to perform oral sex on him in a bathroom just recently. And the alleged victim went to Ronan Farrow, and Ronan Farrow didn't touch the story. So I'm wondering why not. Did it have anything to do with Cory Booker being a Democrat? And two, maybe we should use the Kavanaugh standard for Booker. I mean, guilty until proven innocent. And the media telling you to tone down the rhetoric, I mean, that's like an alcoholic telling you to stop drinking. It's like, no, you're the drunk. You're the drunk. You guys have been saying the president is a mentally ill, racist, Nazi, Russian traitor who needs to be frog-marched out of the White House, calling his daughter the C word and hoping his son gets raped. And now you're mad because he calls you fake news, is the enemy of the American people. You guys can dish it out, but you can't take it.
I think we got some new video of President Trump just arriving at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center right here. I don't see him, but
I think that's
there are 4 police officers that are injured and being treated at the hospital, and then some additional people who were there.
All right, so let's go to this, Dana. I want to go back to this.
NBC?
NBC claims that this was no longer a story because by the time this information had come out, the confirmation hearing was over. So forget about it.
So I read the explanation. Kate Snow was the anchor and reporter that did the interview, and so you have to read the explanation like 3 or 4 times, and it still doesn't quite make sense why they wouldn't want to just kind of own up to it right away and say we had this, we didn't know. They did certainly jump on it. What's interesting is that how much it just backfired.
Yeah.
Not just NBC, but Bill Hemmer was talking about there's 5 key Senate races that we're going to watch. One of them is Indiana. I'm going to actually be there tomorrow. They said that the actual momentum for the Republican, the only time he pulled ahead in the election was after Kavanaugh.
Juan, do you think the Kavanaugh story had an effect, or because they saw the overreach of the Democrats on this?
The story had a definite effect in terms of energizing Republican voters. The base of the voters, you saw the spike in terms of their enthusiasm post-Kavanaugh, no question about it. The question is whether or not that enthusiasm has dissipated and whether people are still reacting. What we've seen, I think, just in the last week is a drop in the president's approval ratings, even before the shootings took place. So I think, in a sense, the question is how much do Republicans still lock into that moment as a driving force, a sense of grievance that would lead them. Let me just add, in terms of the NBC story, that Kate Snow, the reporter, stands by her reporting. And I must say, I thought when she interviewed Swetnick, it damaged Swetnick, and it damaged Avenatti. So I know your perspective, Greg, but I'm just saying, hey, wait a second, if you were on the side of saying, hey, there's something new here, something that could be damaging to Kavanaugh, actually it wasn't, because
the problem is
she said he didn't. Hang on, let me just finish. She said he didn't spike the punch. She never saw anybody lining up outside a door to assault women. I thought it was helpful to Kavanaugh.
But the problem is, Kate Snow's not being honest, and either is NBC. They spoke to the second woman at the end of September. The last text message exchange was October 5th, when this woman said that accused Avenatti of twisting her words. And still to this day, we have no corroborating witnesses or evidence supporting any of the claims from Christine Ford, Deborah Ramirez, or Julie Swetnick. And it's even more nefarious than that, because you look at the Washington Post, we don't even know if Emma Brown, the reporter there, ever had Ford's notes. She wrote in her column, or her story rather, that she received portions of them, but Christine Ford testified under oath that she wasn't sure she gave them the notes or just a summary of it. And then you go to the New Yorker story. Deborah Ramirez herself said that she was very drunk that night. She was on the floor. She doesn't remember. Ronan Farrow, who's one of the authors, said that Democrats went out seeking Deborah Ramirez's story. Jane Meyer later would tell Elle that in the Me Too era, it is important to establish a pattern of behavior. That is why they aggressively pursued this story from Deborah Ramirez. The New York Times said that they interviewed several dozen people and couldn't find a single eyewitness to corroborate the story of Deborah Ramirez. So you have 3 stories without any evidence, no corroborating witnesses, yet the media was happy to run these stories to damage Brett Kavanaugh, and it is wrong.
Isn't that good news that they didn't find anything?
All right. We got to move on, you guys. Senator Claire McCaskill distancing herself from who she calls crazy Democrats in her own party. That's it.
We're just 7 days away from the midterms and ahead of a very tough re-election battle in Missouri. There, Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill now separating herself from some in her very own Democratic Party. Take a look.
The crazy Democrats are people who walk in restaurants and scream in elected officials' faces. The crazy Democrats we have a state senator here in Missouri that actually advocated for the assassination of President Trump. That's a crazy Democrat. I don't do those things. I am not somebody who thinks that we should ever be uncivil.
Last night. So Lisa, Senator McCaskill was talking to our Brett Baier last night and said this, and when he asked specifically who she was referring to in terms of her colleagues in the Senate, pointed to Elizabeth Warren. What do you think?
Well, she's also voted with Elizabeth Warren 60% of the time, and she's only voted with the president 45% of the time. And what you just saw there is political posturing from Claire McCaskill, because she is running in the state of Missouri, which is a state that President Trump won by 19 points. She's in a very tough re-election against Josh Hawley. And what is damaging for her is that President Trump is about to start this 11 rally tour for the next 6 days, including her state. And what he is going to do is stand on stage and say, Claire McCaskill is not with me, even though she's trying to posture and pretend like she is. And the same problem is going to be people for like John Tester in Montana, who his first ad of the election cycle was touting his working with President Trump. He ran full-page ads in newspapers in Montana to welcome President Trump to the state. So they are all going to be in big trouble when President Trump comes to their states in the coming days.
Jesse, what do you make of this? Because picking up on what Lisa's talking about, Claire McCaskill said, hey, I voted for 70% of Trump's judicial nominees.
Yeah, it must be Halloween because Claire's putting the Trump mask on. You know she's going to lose when she starts moving hard to the right. She's going on Fox News and going after Elizabeth Warren, attacking the caravan and attacking mobs.
You mean she's Jesse Waters?
I mean, even if you pretend you're Jesse, you're still not going to get elected. Only a real Waters could get elected. Only in Missouri, though.
You just don't want to be underwater and polling.
Right. Trump did win Missouri by 20 points. He doubled the margin that Romney picked up there, and they love Donald Trump there. She voted against Kavanaugh. That really hurt her. And Hawley's been up about 4 points in the latest poll. He was up 8 in the last poll. She hasn't been ahead since December. I think she's going down, and this is a desperate attempt to cling to victory.
I'm going to look at it slightly differently. I think that she might have realized that she's already locked in her Democratic base, so now she's trying to make a play for what remaining independent voters there might be or undecided voters. And so she would go on Fox News, or she's trying to say, hey, look, I'm actually more moderate than my voting record would suggest. But talking about how moderate you are doesn't paper over how Josh Hawley has been able to say, look at her voting record, 12 years of being very liberal. She's to the left of where Missouri is. You should vote for me instead. And I also think that a little bit of this is chickens coming home to roost. But Elizabeth Warren also cut her a check, right? So Elizabeth Warren is willing to take some blows from friendly Democrats or people who are friendly to her because she knows that they've got to figure out a way to win. That's good leadership, actually.
Good leadership.
Yeah, to allow your people to do what they need to do.
Oh, I see your point.
Yeah.
Greg?
I don't know. I'm indifferent because I kind of wish we had more Democrats like that, you know, like the Joe Liebermans of the world. So I don't want to I don't want to be too angry about her for trying to save her hide. But she is right about what she's talking about. She does have crazy people in her party, and they're not the bug in the system. The system is filled with bugs. It's you know, infested. This is a party that's urging face-to-face confrontation, and that's more common on the left than the right, because the left believes you're evil. They believe that they can confront you because you're obviously a moral beast. So I think it's always good to hear that from somebody, even if she's trying to save her hide. But that's all I got to say on that.
Really, a moral beast. You know, I'm thinking Halloween. I just want Frankenstein or somebody. President Trump sparking a fierce debate after saying he's going to end birthright citizenship. Wow, that's next, right here on The Five.
Something to see, baby.
Welcome back. Well, President Trump is firing a major new shot in the heated battle over illegal immigration. The president says he is planning to sign an executive order to end birthright citizenship for children of non-citizens and undocumented immigrants born in the United States. Listen.
It was always told to me that you needed a constitutional amendment.
Right.
Guess what?
Amendment.
You don't.
You don't.
You can definitely do it with an act of Congress, but now they're saying I can do it just with an executive order. We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous.
But opponents say such an order would trigger a major legal showdown. So, Dana, I'm going to start with you. President Trump... Well, because I want you to kind of break this down for everyone. So President Trump says that he can do this via executive order. Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, and Paul Ryan says that he cannot. Lindsey Graham is now going to introduce legislation. Where is all of this heading?
Well, I think that what the president is doing is saying, this is an issue that we should talk about. It's an issue that we talked about on the campaign, and we should do something about it. I don't know if he's specifically saying that he said he could do it by executive order. I don't know who's told him that. Maybe there's a piece of it that he could do. There's no doubt this has been a debate within legal circles for a long time. John Yoo, who worked at the Bush administration, now teaches at Berkeley, thinks there's no way you can do this without a constitutional amendment. There are other people like Lindsey Graham who think, actually, no, the law would say you could do this. Ultimately, that would end up at the Supreme Court. But from a communication standpoint, I think President Trump is doing something that he has done before, which is to say, I'm going to introduce this issue. And then you have the media immediately saying, well, that's not true. There are actually 30 other countries that have birthright citizenship, and that's not true. And there's a nitpicking him on that, when actually most people would look at that and say, well, wait, why do we do that again? Oh, the 14th Amendment. Why do we have the 14th Amendment? Oh, because of the terrible Dred Scott decision. Who came up with the 14th Amendment? It was actually Republicans. All of these things. There's another number that I thought was interesting. In 2014, in the United States, 270,000 births in America were to parents that were not in the country legally. That's 7% of all births in America. Some people might say, well, that's not so bad. That's actually good. I don't know. I think that it is worth everybody having a discussion about this, especially when you have crime and problems where you had, just in Queens, here about 3 weeks ago, a terrible situation where they had called it a Chinese baby farm, and one of the women that was there to help birth the babies went nuts, and she stabbed a baby, she stabbed a mother. Like, this is happening across the country. It's not wrong to have a conversation about it. When the president's opponents immediately go to nitpicking him on little things, they miss the big picture once again.
Well, so this is actually an issue. Harry Reid, former Democrat majority leader, once introduced legislation to end birthright citizenship. You also have Democrats that used to be for securing the border. Why so much change in the Democrat Party regarding immigration issues?
I don't think that's necessarily changed. I don't think that Harry Reid necessarily speaking for all Democrats, Lisa, but I do think that in this moment, when you have the president, making the caravan into an approaching army of invaders, that he brings this up again to press the fear button with regard to immigration as a political campaign issue for the midterms. I think that's what we're doing here. He has said, why is the media paying so much attention to the bomber or to the shooter in Pittsburgh? Let's get back. Republicans get out the vote. Well, this is his issue. And, unlike Dana, I think when he tells things that aren't true and says, oh, gee, we're the only country that does this, and in fact it's not true, somebody should say, hey, Mr. President.
No, I'm not saying that they shouldn't point it out, but if you focus on it, you're missing the point that he wants to have a conversation about the underlying issue.
You see, the underlying issue, though, for me with him is he's a guy who says things like S-hole countries, and he's very hard on immigrants for a political reason.
Let's get Greg in here. Greg?
Well, thank you. I don't think this is surprising because when your filter is always law and order and process, anything that appears to circumvent the system will be viewed as line cutting. And I think almost anybody that is a fan of a system, you don't like it when people appear to cut in line. I didn't know that number. 238,000?
275,000.
That's incredible. I think that's a lot of. I would call like it's a great way to get into the country. And I think Trump understands human nature to take advantage of a system's flaws, and he knows that because he talked about it with his tax behavior. You know, he says like when there are loopholes in the system, people take advantage of it. However, this line cutting may be built into our Constitution, whether we like it or not. Perhaps it's better to focus on the process that exploits the loopholes. You may not be able to close that loophole, but maybe you can figure out the process that keeps it from happening.
Jesse, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll be quick. Jacob Howard, who drafted the 14th Amendment, actually explicitly says it should not apply to persons born in the United States who are foreigners or aliens. Also, to Dana's point, 275,000 births now. In 1980, it was only 30,000, so you've seen an explosion. Bombs, and they've found firearms and firecrackers, glass bottles, and stones are being thrown at authorities from people in
Oh, my. Fright night, fright night.
Maybe it doesn't scare one, but maybe some other people.
You know what is frightening? Take a listen to this. Dana informs us that it's not her, but find out who screamed the loudest when Jesse and Dana visited a haunted house. Stay tuned.
We're celebrating Halloween early on the 5, and somehow Dana and I got suckered into visiting a haunted house. Let's check it out. We're here at Blood Manor, Dana and I, New York's premier haunted attraction. We're wearing these GoPros so they could capture all of Dana's shrieks, not mine.
And there will be shrieks. I have not been to a haunted house since I think I was 13.
I'm not that scared. You know, pretty tough. These things don't traditionally scare me. If you do hear me scream at all, it's probably because I'm hamming it up for the cameras.
That's right. If I'm shrieking, you can guarantee that it's because I'm terrified.
All right, let's do it. Okay! All right. Yeah, guys, freaking me out, man! Okay, let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Oh, God! Oh, God! Let's go! Let's go! Oh, Jesus!
Okay. Inside first. Ooh, you got pretty hair. Let me chop it off for my dolly.
Oh, stop touching me. Stop touching me. I can't see anything.
This is the worst idea
I can't see anything. I don't feel so good. I think I hurt my neck. On the first day. Oh, I've been enjoying cutting you open. Oh no! 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 Get out of here! Which way? Oh my gosh. We survived Blood Manor.
I am so glad you were in front.
I'm not.
I don't know if I could do that again.
Dana, I don't feel so well.
I thought you were joking.
No, I feel sick. If you want to be scared, do this. Wow, that was humiliating. I really put on a good show for everybody.
Yes, you did. You were not scared at all. I do like the training bra you were wearing.
I had to strap the GoPro on.
The GoPro added a little bit of extra tension because you knew that their face the entire time was. I didn't like the screaming in my ears, so I felt really bad. I tucked it behind Jesse the whole time.
You're hearing sensitive.
I have misophonia.
Were they extra scary to you because of perhaps where
These were all Bernie Sanders supporters.
They just showed Elizabeth Warren the entire time.
Yeah, they found out Fox was coming and they
You know what it was?
went all
I think that they love what they're doing. These are actors and actors that love getting the reaction from all of us.
And we were acting a little bit too, Dana. I mean, I wasn't that scared.
Sure.
I wasn't that scared.
Hey, I saw that axe come out. I thought, wow, it's a good thing they missed you, Jess.
It was a little too close for comfort.
They have excellent set design.
What was the scariest part? I think the medical room where
the butcher shop and the medical room was a little too real.
I don't like being scared in general, so I was behind Jesse and I would tell him, I'm like, okay, get ready because something's going to pop out. And then just as I was about to warn him, something came out.
Yeah, you hid from everybody behind me the whole time like this, and I took it on the chin.
You know, I just feel like I'm watching a lost episode, like a special Halloween episode of Friends. And Ross and Rachel are trapped in a haunted house.
Is this all year round, or is it just for Halloween?
It's just right now, but it goes through next weekend. So it's downtown New York City. It's called Blood Manor. I recommend checking it out.
How much is it to go?
I think it's $35 a ticket to go.
You pay additional money if you want to cut the line. So I would recommend that because there's a long line.
There's a long line. It's worth it. It's
line cutter.
Yeah, I think there's a caravan.
I pay to cut the line.
He did it the legal way.
Like the rich ones do.
Right, all right. One more thing's up next. We're celebrating Halloween early on the 5, and somehow Dana and I got suckered into visiting a haunted house. Let's check it out. We're here at Blood Manor, Dana and I, New York's premier haunted attraction. We're wearing these GoPros so they could capture all of Dana's shrieks, not mine.
And there will be shrieks. I have not been to a haunted house since I think I was 13.
I'm not that scared. You know, pretty tough. These things don't traditionally scare me. If you do hear me scream at all, it's probably because I'm hamming it up for the cameras.
That's right. If I'm shrieking, you can guarantee that it's because I'm terrified.
All right, let's do it. Okay! All right. Yeah, guys, freaking me out, man! Okay, let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Oh, God! Oh, God! Let's go! Let's go! Oh, Jesus!
Okay. Inside first. Ooh, you got pretty hair. Let me chop it off for my dolly.
Oh, stop touching me! Stop touching me! I can't see anything!
This is the worst idea
I can't see anything! I don't feel so good. I think I hurt my neck. On the first day. Oh, God. You brought a little chicken nugget with you. Oh, it's a butcher shop. Oh, I've been enjoying cutting you open. Oh, no. No. Which way? it over? Oh my gosh. We survived Blood Manor.
I am so glad you were in front.
I'm not.
I don't know if I could do that again.
Dana, I don't feel so well.
I thought you were joking.
No, I feel sick. If you want to be scared, do this. Wow, that was humiliating. I really put on a good show for everybody.
Yes, you did. You were not scared at all. I do like the training bra you were wearing.
I had to strap the GoPro on.
The GoPro added a little bit of extra tension because you knew that their face the entire time was. I didn't like the screaming in my ears, so I felt really bad. I tucked it behind Jesse the whole time.
You're hearing sensitive.
I have misophonia.
Were they extra scary to you because of perhaps where
These were all Bernie Sanders supporters.
They just showed Elizabeth Warren the entire time.
Yeah, they found out Fox was coming and they
You know what it was?
went all
I think that they love what they're doing. These are actors and actors that love getting the reaction from all of us.
And we were acting a little bit too, Dana. I mean, I wasn't that scared.
Sure.
I wasn't that scared.
Hey,
I knew it was fake.
I saw that axe come out. I thought, wow, it's a
I
good
know.
thing they missed you, Jess.
It was a little too close for comfort.
They have excellent set design.
What was the scariest part? I think the medical room where
the butcher shop and the medical room was a little too real.
I don't like being scared in general, so I was behind Jesse and I would tell him, I'm like, okay, get ready because something's going to pop out. And then just as I was about to warn him, something came out.
Yeah, you hid from everybody behind me the whole time like this, and I took it on the chin.
I just feel like I'm watching a lost